As a Japanese housewife living in the US, I want to look at the counterfacts of socialization from unique perspectives.
Have you ever stood by a massive reservoir, one of those huge man-made lakes, and just marveled at the sheer scale of it? These structures are modern wonders, monuments to our ability to tame nature, built with a clear promise to end drought and secure our water supply. For decades, we built them bigger and bigger, believing that if we could just capture enough river water, our worries about dry spells would be over. But what if I told you that this very solution, this grand strategy, might be failing us? What if the reservoirs themselves are becoming part of the problem, shrinking into the very droughts they were meant to prevent? Let's travel back to the early 20th century. The American West was a land of booming opportunity, but it had a major Achilles heel: water. It was a place of extremes, devastating floods one year and soul-crushing droughts the next. The solution seemed obvious and heroic: build dams, build massive concrete walls to hold back the rivers, store the spring snowmelt, and create vast reservoirs of water that could be released on demand for farms, cities, and industry. The Hoover Dam on the Colorado River became the poster child for this era. It was a symbol of progress, of human ingenuity, triumphing over the unpredictability of nature, and for a long time, it worked. Cities like Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Las Vegas blossomed in the desert. California's Central Valley transformed into the world's most productive agricultural region. We had seemingly drought-proofed the West. But here's where the story takes a turn. We fell into a trap, a kind of psychological feedback loop. Because we had these huge reservoirs, we started using water as if the supply was infinite. We built sprawling suburbs with lush green lawns in the middle of arid landscapes. Water-intensive crops like alfalfa and almonds in places that received barely any rain. The reservoirs gave us a false sense of security. They masked the true nature of the environment we were living in. We weren't living with the desert. We were trying to conquer it. And the bigger our cities and farms grew, the more water we demanded, putting even more pressure on the very systems we built for security. This, what hydrologists and sociologists call the reservoir effect, it's a paradox. The presence of a large water supply encouraged development and consumption patterns that eventually outstrip that supply. We built the reservoirs to solve a problem, but their existence created a bigger, more complicated version of the same problem. We were essentially writing checks that our water budget couldn't cash in the long run. Then came the second, even bigger challenge: climate change. The science is clear. Our world is getting hotter. For the regions that rely on reservoirs, this has a devastating one-two punch. First, rising temperatures mean more of the winter. Precipitation falls as rain instead of snow. Snowpack is like a natural, slow-release reservoir. It melts gradually throughout the spring and summer, steadily feeding the rivers and our man-made reservoirs. When it rains instead, all that water comes rushing down at once. We can capture some of it, but much of it can overwhelm the system, forcing dam operators to release it to prevent flooding, meaning it's lost downstream and out to sea. We lose that critical, steady, summer-long supply. The second punch is evaporation. Think of a reservoir as a giant, shallow pan of water sitting under the sun. The hotter it gets, the faster that water turns into vapor and disappears into the atmosphere. For massive reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell, this is not a small amount. We read talking about losing millions of acre-feet of water each year just to evaporation enough to supply millions of households. As temperatures continue to rise, these evaporative losses are only going to get worse. So, the reservoirs that were meant to store water are now actively losing it to the sky at an alarming rate. We can see this happening in real time. Just look at the photos of Lake Mead or Lake Powell over the past 2 decades. You'll see the infamous bathtub rings, the stark, white mineral stains left on the canyon walls, showing just how far the water levels have fallen. These aren't just pictures. They are a dire warning. The Colorado River, the lifeblood for 40 million people, is overallocated. More water rights have been promised to states, farmers, and cities than the river actually carries in an average year. And that's before accounting for the increasing impacts of climate change. The system is running a permanent deficit. Our savings account is shrinking, and our spending habits haven't changed nearly enough. And this isn't just a story about the American West. It's playing out all over the world. From the shrinking Lake Chad in Africa to the struggling reservoirs in Spain, India, and Australia, the story is hauntingly similar. We built these incredible engineering feats based on the climate of the past, assuming that rainfall and river flows would remain relatively stable. But they aren't. The very foundation of our water security strategy is being eroded by the new climate reality. So, are we doomed? Is it all just a downward spiral? Not necessarily. But we have to fundamentally rethink our relationship with water. The era of simply building another, bigger dam is over. The solution isn't more concrete. It's more creativity and a heavy dose of realism. First, we have to get serious about conservation. This isn't just about taking shorter showers. It's about systemic change. It means cities are paying residents to tear out their grass lawns and replace them with drought-tolerant native plants. It means investing heavily in water recycling technology, treating wastewater to a standard where it can be used again for irrigation or even safely returned to our drinking water supplies. It means fixing the leaks in our aging urban water pipes, which can lose a shocking amount of water before it ever reaches a tap. Agriculture is the biggest piece of the puzzle, since it uses the vast majority of our water. We need a revolution in farming. This includes shifting from flood irrigation, which is incredibly wasteful, to highly efficient methods like drip irrigation that deliver water directly to the roots of plants. It also means using technology sensors, drones, and AI to give crops the exact amount of water they need, no more, no less. And perhaps the most difficult conversation is about what we grow and where. Does it make sense to grow super thirsty crops in the middle of a desert? These are tough economic and cultural questions, but we can't afford to ignore them. We also need to look at smarter ways to store water, instead of just relying on surface reservoirs that are vulnerable to evaporation. We can focus on managed aquifer recharge. This is the practice of intentionally putting excess water from rainy periods back into the ground, refilling our natural underground aquifers. These underground reservoirs don't suffer from evaporation and storing water. There is a way of working with nature's own systems. This is a massive challenge, and it can feel overwhelming, but it's also an opportunity for innovation. We built the great dams of the 20th century. Now, the great challenge of the 21st century is to build a new system, a flexible, resilient, and sustainable water future that isn't based on the illusion of infinite supply. It requires a shift in mindset from conquering nature to collaborating with it. The reservoirs aren't the villains in this story. They are simply tools that we have outgrown, or at least that we are using incorrectly in a changing world. They've shown us the limits of our old way of thinking. Now, it's up to us to listen to that warning and build the smarter solutions that will carry us through the droughts of the future. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this topic as fascinating and important as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the systems that shape our world. See you in the next one.